Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll bring this Cecil Township Zoning and Hearing Board meeting to order. First, I'll apologize in advance. If we're like super loud or super quiet, let us know, because this is a brand new system. These microphones are brand new. They're like really in our face, but so let us know if we need to tone it down or be a little bit louder. So to get started, I will just introduce the board and the participants who are here today. My name's Kara Sheridan. I'm the chairman of the board. We have James Jones, who is the vice president. We have Troy Gump, the secretary, and Alan Barney, the alternate. We also have Chris Voltz here from Tucker Aaronsburg. He is our solicitor. Liz Ross, who is the zoning director, and Kathy Landock is our court stenographer for this evening. So to get started, we start with old business, and we need to approve. Sorry, guys? Question? Oh, yeah. We need to go ahead and approve the minutes from, it was August, right? It says July 15th, or the last meeting minutes that we need to approve. I'll ask for a motion.
I have a motion to approve the minutes of the July 15th meeting.
No, sorry, Alan, you're just an alternate for this one. It needs to be a sitting
I
member.
was at that meeting.
Oh, you're right. I apologize. Kara, you weren't at that meeting, I don't
Correct.
think.
I was
So,
gonna-
my mistake. Thank you, Mr. Barney.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain. Next, we'll go to old business. We have application 2024-0005, Lambert Fisher variance. The last that I heard here, we didn't have all the information required for that. And we may, do we want to talk through this, or are we going to? Oh, we do have someone. Okay. Before we do that, if Kathy, if we can swear in, anyone who thinks you're going to speak at today's hearing, if you could stand, even if you're not sure, it's better if you just stand. Stand and get sworn in by Kathy so that your testimony can be recorded.
Yeah, if you tell me swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Okay, so old business, again, application 2024-0005, Lambert Fisher. This is a C1 General Commercial Zoning District, and there is a request for setback variances for a new commercial building. We had heard this at a previous time and asked for some additional information from the applicant to be provided. If you could just state your name and address for the record before you get started. Great. I told you there would maybe be some AV problems. Hello? What about the station? Does this mic work? No.
He's just transferring so that we can view his stuff on the screen.
Okay.
Let's see if I can. Did we find any buttons on these?
No. Just real quick, just to recap sort of where we left off the last time, we asked if an actual a survey at the time. You didn't have a survey. If a survey could be conducted, we would have actual more specific details on the dimensions that you were requesting. And we also asked you to consider coming up with an alternate building design that would lessen the amount of variances that were required in this case. So just for those in the audience who maybe weren't at the last meeting, that was where we left it the last time.
You ready?
I am,
We're
yeah.
just gonna go without a mic
That's
for now.
fine. 347, yeah.
Andrew Good? ANDREWGOOD. I'm the managing partner for Lambert Fisher. As Kara said, where we last left off, we were waiting on our survey. We had an old presentation. These are some of the renders from the old presentation. The building is not gonna be able to look like that anymore. We did have to go back through and rework our footprint and, what we're gonna be able to do after getting the survey. Let's see. So, this survey we got back from Scheffler. You can see resolution's not great on this one, but I have another one with tighter resolution. With the 45-foot commercial zone setbacks off of Pat and Cecil Henderson. What's really squeezing us is the setbacks from the street and then creek setbacks from DEP. We've got that 50 feet, so we're trying to work what we have available in between those two, which is not much. As you can see on this, all the red circles are that 50-foot area that are not able to be developed without a multiple year endeavor through DEP. Initially, we had been looking at, let's see this, okay, so we've got site 1, and then site 2 and site 3. Part of what we had discussed back in whenever that meeting was, May or March or whatever, was to explore the viability of these two other options off of this front corner. This site number 2 up here, we're getting hit with the overhead high voltage transmission line setback from First Energy. That was one of the things we talked about, getting a hold of First Energy because we've got their lines running. I got an email from their facilities engineer, and off of the high voltage lines, can't put anything over there, which we were expecting. You know, they don't like stuff being over there. Totally fair. Those are the ones running this way, and nothing can be within 50 feet of any of their substructures. There are no substructures running on these lines here, but even within this buffer zone, they don't like this line here is at 50 feet, so that hits even that reduced size building. As for these distribution lines that are lower voltage, he said because they're three-phase, there is a 20-foot setback from the diameter of the center lines. So that would affect our eave height on this front corner of site number 1. So we'd be restricted to 11 feet high there, so we're gonna have to rework the design to stay out of their buffer zone. But that's doable as far as First Energy is concerned. Site number 3, with how this parcel is shaped with this bump out here, we actually got in touch with the Montour Trail Council to see if they'd be interested in a land swap. That was at a suggestion of our engineers. This is what we sent them, trying to swap them this green area for this blue area so that we could, you know, expand this, because right now, the way that it would have been with no land swap, it'd be 22 feet wide, and that's even if that were able to be constructed back there. We're talking cutting out the hillside, getting a driveway on this side of the creek would be quite the task. And then they, unfortunately, well, they rejected our proposal. They said they are aggressive about retaining the green space, you know, on that side of the trail, which, again, totally fair. We weren't necessarily, we really liked this potential option being back here, but we, where's that? That's the wrong one. So, again, we've got these 50-foot lines from the creek because of how it meanders, you know, kind of squeezes us real tight down there. So that leaves us with this front corner one, which one of the concerns from the last meeting, we were talking about the redesigning the building more narrow to alleviate any line of sight concerns with the intersection right there. So I went to the Federal Highway Administration's website to get their intersection design criteria. The speed limit along Cecil Henderson right there is 40, so they want at least 305 feet for your stopping sight distance. And let's see, that is this point right here on Cecil Henderson. And zoomed in, that's where you can see up there, corner, the street sign for PAP. That's where the distance for, where is that? I'm sorry. Right here. That's where this is. There's that street sign for PAP right here. That C on Cecil Henderson was the current line of sight, and that is 339 feet. So that's how it is right there. As it is with this overgrowth, the way the lot is now. As for where the front part of the building is, to not affect any line of sight, this point here, right here, this would be the front corner of the building. So we are actually behind the current line of obstruction as it stands. I know we had said something about putting a building where we had wanted to would actually improve line of sight. Now we know it will, because we're behind the current line of obstruction. I know people tend to go faster than 40 down there, but as far as the highway administration's guidelines go, that would be good for that intersection. What else did we have from the last meeting? Oh, we have our preliminarily approved sewage plan from the Washington County Sewage Council. I have that letter here in my email. If you guys needed to see it, I can send that over to you whenever, because they said we'll need an agreement and an escrow account with township for the holding tank. But as far as the sewage goes, we're good there. So we got the power line sorted. That's that one right there. So coming off these three-phase lines is 20 feet, if you were imagining this line invisible coming down. So that radius right there is where we gotta stay out of.
So 20 feet from that line will be
20
the
if you imagine
edge of
a
the
circle.
envelope
I'm
of the
sorry?
building? From the edge of the power line to the front edge of the envelope of
he
the building?
said, he said nothing within 20 feet. He said, if we need to call in to relocate a pole, because I told him about that one that's inside that runoff. He didn't sound terribly concerned about it, but he said if we need to call in to relocate, there is a process for that, and they will come out and relocate a pole if need be, at least for these low voltage lines. So we're kind of, I don't want to say we're out of options as far as this parcel goes, because it's a shame, because it's a rather large parcel, but we're kind of squeezed anywhere we try to go.
So are there changes to the so are you requesting the same original dimensional variances that you requested the first time, saying it's going, really the best option, evaluating all those other options is what we initially came and applied
So
for.
the initial one, we came with a 36 by 40, and then at your suggestion, we narrowed and lengthened it to, you know, fit better. But that doesn't change much as far as right here, right? Because if this corner of the building has to stay here, where this is all along the setback line, I don't know if I can zoom in here or not. Okay. This part right here, this number doesn't change regardless of, you know, if we had been 36 or 30 or whatever, because this front corner can't change. Unfortunately, what that ends up being is this spot here is approximately 2 feet. That's developable right now, 2 feet up to 6 feet. So that ends up being a approximately 43-foot variance request off of the 45.
So again, can you go back and show me the area number 3? And that one also would be completely outside of the zoning area. So the dotted line that you have there, that cuts through number 1 and kind of goes in and around in a rectangle, is inside of that area is where we would permit, and then outside of that area is where we would not permit. So there's effectively, in number 1, it's like 80% of the building would be outside of the area. Number 2 looks like 40%, and number 3 would be entirely outside of the area, right?
Yeah, and that's why, you know, 3 was, we were moderately hopeful about 3 initially because it being the the rear setback, and there's nothing up against it, it's just the trail.
Right.
But they don't want to swap any land there to make that, you know, any different. So.
I do have a question. Could you speak to why each of the dimensions are different? Is there something driving, based upon the location, why, for instance, the dimensions of building number 3 wouldn't suffice in the location of building number 1 or 2?
Oh, it's not so much that they're sufficient, it's just that's all that we could do.
Okay.
With how the creek meanders through the parcel. Excuse me, all of these circles are the 50-foot, 50-foot setback from the creek.
So if I understand it correctly, the blue boxes are your maximum build potential that you're
Right,
suggesting.
these were the 3 possibilities that came out of that first meeting. And it's a very unfortunately shaped parcel here.
I mean, just piggybacking on my colleague's statement, so like, location number 2, while it's not entirely compliant, a larger portion of it is. If you were able to adjust dimensions of location number 2, it might be a more suitable position for a variance.
Yeah, this is where, so number 2 is the one where we're getting hit by the First Energy
Mhm.
overhead high voltage transmission lines. This line here, my partner, he's not here tonight, but he's the one that mocked this up earlier. He didn't highlight, you know, another red circle. That would have been, you know, out, again, that 50 feet.
In the scenario of 1, 2, and 3 locations, your method of getting to 1, 2, and 3 via driveway, how are you gonna access 1 versus 2 and 3?
So 1 is, they'd all be coming off a path, and that's one of the hardships with number 2, even if First Energy had said, yeah, you're good to be that close to our roughly quintuple the distance of driveway. And when we talked to our builder, with the grade difference and, what they looked at, they said it'd be roughly $30,000 just to get the foundation, suitable to how this front corner is. And then this one would have also been coming off a pat, but that's real tight, right here, because you've got that, the trail runs over, and you've got that concrete that runs roughly right here. There would be room for a small driveway, but again, they won't swap, land for us there. This one would have also been an increase in development cost just because of taking out the hillside, putting in retaining wall. But that really only would have worked if the Montour Trail Council had agreed to give us something more. Get out of that now.
So for number 2, I'm just saying this for argument's sake, did you look at, say, like increasing the portion of the building on the front side and moving over? I mean, it wouldn't be a perfect square then, obviously, but I'm just trying to think, like, so I could imagine there's another red circle, right, around that
Right.
utility pole. That's
So
how many
yeah,
feet?
narrow it.
Could we cut off part of this to get in compliance with the utility pole situation and maybe add some additional over to the other side? I'm just spitballing here.
Okay, so almost like adding it
Right.
here,
That's what I'm thinking,
over here, okay.
because, I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but for me, I mean, number 3 is completely out, because it's entirely outside of the
Right.
setback.
Yeah, that's, as soon as this survey came back, that's
Yeah.
that's exactly what.
And number 1 is almost entirely outside of the setback.
Right.
I think getting on board with 1 or 3 is going to be a big challenge, at least for me personally. Number 2, if we could look at maybe we might be able to squeeze something in there with a minimal amount of setback requirement. If you can fiscally make it, feasible for you to do that with the driveway and everything. I mean, that's just another thought that I have. Oh yeah, there's another potential spot there. Yeah, if you move your mouse to your left, where in between where those bubbles are, or another option, if that would become an option to get some, we have to have at least some significant portion within
Right.
the permitted area to consider, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, this spot here, this pole, I mean, if we gotta call them a relocate anyway, then
That's true.
that'd be something.
Put
Yeah.
this up here this way.
That's true.
Well, so do you think the utility pole closer to the second second site is that able to be relocated, or you don't know?
This pole, I don't know if they would be relocated. The pole itself isn't the problem, it's the buffer zone from the high voltage lines.
I see.
And those they can't move.
I see. But theoretically, we may possibly, the one that's in between 1 and 2, right there, in kind of the center section, you might be able to squeeze something in there if you could get them to relocate that pole.
Now,
right?
if we were to narrow number 2 to where we're outside of their high voltage buffer zone, and then lengthen it this way, because this is below grade, I know they said it'd be, $30,000 just to get the ground ready to go, and that's, with when they told us that, we did not do the wetland survey yet, because if we're already looking at that, we're not gonna pour 10
Right.
more into the wetland survey if that's not gonna work.
So are you asking, do you think we would be okay with encroaching
Yeah, I mean,
more?
so let's say there's no wetland, we don't have to do any wetland remediation, or migration there, and we managed to come up with the funds for the site prep. If we were to be outside of the high voltage line buffer zone and move it up this way,
Any thoughts from anyone on that?
I mean, my last question, you kind of touched on a little bit about the wetlands and the environmental potential aspect of it, because knowing that area, you'll potentially run into those issues. In my mind, kind of echoing Kara's points, the feasible outcome from us would potentially be a certain percentage of variance that we would potentially, agree to, dependent upon many different things, inclusive of the wetlands study and whatnot. But I do echo my colleagues' concerns with 1 and 3 not being compliant. Well, 3 not at all, but 1 barely.
Yeah, 1 is barely, and it's unfortunate because as far as the way the parcel is currently, that is, or, appears to be the best option. Even when I just went out before I came here and re-ran with the measuring wheel, there's like 3.5 feet that we could come off the street again, but if that's not the issue, if it's not like the line of sight, that's the issue. It's more just this line compliance that, that doesn't really help.
Yeah, I think one of the things when we look at what we're trying to rule on, if you will, is it has to be the minimum possible variance against the ordinance that is feasible. So something that's 90% uncompliant or non-compliant, it makes it pretty hard for us to vote in favor of, because we know there might be, in this case, we know there's other options that possibly would meet your needs now. And I know that the multi-year process going to, get a variance from the DEP, that probably is troublesome. But I guess I'd be more apt to look at a smaller size building that's more in compliance, that meets the requirements. That's my point of view. And then I don't know if there's something you could do in parallel to get started and then look at an additional variance. I don't know if that's something that would be possible enough or not from them.
Everybody so far has advised us to do what we can here, because they said you can go through 2 years with DEP, put in all that money, and then
Right.
they can still
They can say no. Yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah, so.
So I guess what I would say is, if you'd be willing to go back and look if there's a way, double check that I guess it's not the utility pole, it's the setback from the high voltage lines. If there's a way you could configure the building to fit more into, like, to carve off a chunk of that, right? And you see what the red line looks like, and how could we configure possibly a building that as much as possible sits within that small quadrant there, or even better, this middle section, right? Could you fit, 50% or more by getting a relocation of that utility pole? Maybe that would be an option too.
Yeah, this pole here is the one that's sitting in this culvert travel path, so that kind of snakes along right here.
Lots
so
of.
If we sat a building here, I don't know how. I'm sure McGracy would know how to, reroute that if needed.
Or another option would just be to get something in writing that why this would not work. Something from the electrical companies saying, we won't relocate the pole.
Yeah.
It's not allowed to get, it can't comply with our standards if it's there. Or like location number 2, something that we can look on and consider as evidence to, why certain locations work and some don't.
Right. Now, if we can't end up getting, First Energy to cooperate, or, anything else, what are the chances that this ends up a valueless parcel?
Right, we have to get there first, we have to see if there are other locations that can work, or, if your proposed site is the only viable use for the property.
Right. extend again.
I know,
guys.
but
I feel like that's all I do
we,
here, but-
yeah, sorry to ask you to have to do a little more
No,
research and come back. We're really trying to work
Yeah,
with you
we
here,
just gotta-
so.
We're just trying to find something that works, so.
Yeah. So with that, I would move that we grant a request for, or we grant a continuance to continue this hearing to the 10/21/2024 meeting. Can I have a second? Or an alternate?
Actually, how far out could we go? I mean, because I don't know, it took like 6 weeks for somebody First Energy to get back to me.
Yeah, I mean, we
Well,
can.
let's do it to next month, and then
Okay.
but let Liz know
Right.
if
If I
you're
don't
not
hear
ready
anything,
yet,
right, okay.
and then
All right.
we'll.
Okay.
Does anyone want to second my nomination to, or
Ju-
my?
Just
sorry.
wanted a clarification first, like, that is something you're wishing for, not just us to keep pushing it, but you're asking for us to.
Yeah, because, I mean, like, it took forever to get the survey, because we were first scheduled, and then the day that hearing was supposed to be was the day they went out and did our survey, and then it took, First Energy forever to get back to me. If we have to do a wetland survey, who knows how long that's gonna be, so. I remember you telling me, they usually run six weeks plus lead time, so.
Well, you got a good one, Scheffler. He does a good job.
I guess,
Hey, I want to thank you for your presentation tonight. I mean,
very
from the first time that this was brought in front of us, we had pretty much nothing, to now you know your parcel inside out. You know your what you can do, your parameters. You got a good feel for it, but you obviously know there's some more obstacles.
I'm glad we got all your check marks from the last one, checked off for doing it. Now we got this one, so that'll be for the next one.
So would it be fair that you're requesting a continuance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So
second.
I'll make a motion that we grant the request for a continuance and continue the hearing until 10/21/2024.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And just like Chris said, if you can't get the answers and the information you need, just email Liz ahead of time and we can have it continued. We just don't want you to miss out on an opportunity if you are ready. But the sooner you let us know, and anything you can send us ahead of time is always appreciated too. So thank you for your time and preparation. Yep. Okay. That was old business. Now we're on to new business. New business, we would like to consider the settlement agreement related to the Cecil Township versus Cecil Township Zoning and Hearing Board and First Choice, Inc., case number 354 CD 2023 in Commonwealth Court. So for this one, I would like to, this is essentially something that we had before the board previously and was allowed by this board and appealed by Cecil Township Board of Supervisors. It's gone through court proceedings, and the township has come to an agreement with First Choice, Inc. on this arrangement, and we would like I will move that we approve the settlement agreement related to Cecil Township versus Cecil Township Zoning Hearing Board and First Choice, Inc., case number 354 CD 2023 in the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. Can I get a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes 3-0. I didn't hear you, Troy, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, the next item that we have is application 2024-0011, Sharon Duncan. This is 121 Coomer Road, McDonald. The nature of this request is a livestock variance to keep 2 alpacas on less than 2 acres of land. So if someone is here to speak on behalf of this, if you could kind of just come up and tell us a little bit about your application, and we may have some questions, and then we'll go from there.
And I apologize. It has been confirmed that there is no working microphone on the podium tonight. This meeting is being recorded for the website, so please just try to speak as loudly and clearly as possible.
And if you could just state your name and address for the record before we get
My
started.
name is Sharon Duncan. I reside at 121 Coomer Road, McDonald, PA 15057. I had purchased the property on 7/7/23 from Jody Cowden. unfortunately, my car was stolen the night before, and I had to have Officer Stokes and a few detectives come to my home, and I had to fill out a statement saying that my car was stolen. So I had Officer Stokes, detectives at my home from August 1st to August 4th, when my vehicle was finally recovered by Cecil Township. The detective and the officers were at my location numerous times between the 1st and the 4th with the alpacas on the residence. There were no complaints from the police. The alpacas, like I said, arrived August 1st. They resided at the residence all winter, and there was no complaints until May. I had to sell my property in Finleyville, so I was transporting the lawnmower to be cut both residents last summer, and I broke the lawnmower blade. I presented Miss Ross with the receipt from the lawnmower blade, so I didn't have anybody to fix the lawnmower properly and efficiently, so instead of letting the grass grow crazy, I transported the alpacas into the front yard, and I wanted them to help me handle the front yard because I didn't have means to cut it. So once in May, when the alpacas were transferred to the front yard, that's when I started getting complaints about the alpacas. Then I got a complaint because my grass was too high. So obviously there's efficient grass there, that if I'm getting complaints because the grass is too high, then obviously that's kind of a contradiction, saying that I don't have enough land for, the alpacas. Everybody is considering them livestock here. They're actually in the camel family. They are camels. They are called camelids. They are not livestock. It's against the law in Pennsylvania to slaughter an alpaca. They are considered in the camel family. I moved here by myself. I was a victim and a survivor of domestic violence for over 20 years, and my alpacas are my therapy. They're not livestock. They're my therapy. I shave them down once a year, and my cousin just bought a spinning wheel so we could spin their fibers. And my grandma taught me how to crochet since I was 8 years old, and like I said, they're my therapy. I have PTSD from my ex-husband, and when I bought the property from Jody Cowden, I didn't realize that I didn't have enough acreage. I had 8 acres next to Trax Farm in Finleyville with my ex-husband, but like I said, I didn't realize that I didn't have enough acreage for them. My stepsister has 2 pigs in Dormont that she got a proclamation. It was in the Pittsburgh Press that that he was all in approval. They've been there for years. There's no issues, with her pigs 2 blocks from Dormont Pole. I saw in the news 2 weeks ago that there was emus running loose in McKeesport, and I didn't hear any negative. They just said that emus were running loose in McKeesport, and there weren't any, they weren't fining or jailing the people for having them loose. My alpacas are always in my yard, they've never gotten loose. Like I said, the only time that they were, that there was an issue, they were there for 9 months from August 1st. Like I said, I had, unfortunately, the Officer Stokes and detectives at my house, different times of days, different, days, you know, trying to get a statement to recover my car, and, you know, I don't want any trouble, like I said, they're my therapy, I just, you know, I don't know how we can work through this. I mean, you know, getting rid of one, they're bonded pack animals, they're mother and daughter, they're registered, I have papers on them like dogs, so, I can't get rid of one, they're, like I said, they're mother and daughter, and, you know, the one's 4, the other one's 3, so they need to stay together.
Anything else? I appreciate you providing us with all the background, and sorry for everything that you've had to go through. Anything else you'd like to mention? We might have a couple questions for you.
Yeah, I mean, I do crochet, and this is one of the blanket or scarves that I made, and I did give Elizabeth one of my dryer balls that I make too, with
Okay.
different stuff, but, you know, like I said, I've never had to do this before. We had 8 acres, you know, by Trax Farm, and I
Sure.
didn't realize when I bought the property that, you know, there was an issue with that. It's right under the 2 acres. You know, when I spoke with Jody Cowden, she didn't say anything about there being, you know, I don't like to be in trouble, so.
Sure.
This has been pretty much, you know, hell for me, you know, like I said, they're my babies, so.
Sure. Do you guys want to start with any questions that you have? I have a couple, but you can
Yeah.
start.
I did have a question regarding so the 2 alpacas are mom and child alpacas. How long have you had mom? Or did you get them as a,
For 3 years, I bought the mom, she was pregnant with the baby, and I birthed the baby.
and how old's mom now?
She's 4, and the
She's-
baby's 3. She was pregnant when I bought her.
So they reside in Finleyville
That's
up
one of where I
until
used to-
August 1st of 2023?
They were at Coomer Road on August 1st. Like I said, I had to call the Cecil Township Police because somebody stole my black Mustang.
Understood.
Yeah, no. Like I said, sir, I moved in on 7/7 was the closing date on Coomer Road.
Sure.
And I had to fix the fence that was there because it was broken down. So I had to move everything by myself, and it took me 3 weeks to get the alpacas there.
Right.
They've been there since August 1st, 2023.
Okay, you are aware that Cecil Township does permit alpacas, it's just the criteria that you don't meet. Are you understanding that?
Yes, but like I said, they're service animals, they're not pets, and like I said, previous to the alpacas being reported in May, like I said, they were there for 9 months without any report. The grass was an issue, prior to the alpacas, and the fence was an issue prior to the alpacas. So, like I said, there is obviously substantial, you know, pasture for them, and I do buy hay for them, they have grain, so, you know, like I said, that's kind of contradicting that, you know, I'm getting, you know, possibly cited for the grass being too high, but then, you know, you're saying I don't have, you know, enough land for alpacas. That's kind of a contradiction to me.
Do you have any other questions, Troy? I don't mean to
Well,
put you.
it wasn't a question, but I was going to point out that if you were to combine your parcels, that would get you closer to what do you need, 2 acres to have 2 alpaca?
Yeah, I was gonna go there.
But you only have the one parcel here in Cecil Township, correct?
No, I own I have two parcels.
Beside each other?
Subdivided.
They're front and back, ma'am. I
Okay.
have two parcels.
And what do the two parcels add up to, Liz? Are we just, are we?
It's 1.9 something, ma'am. Yeah, I have two parcels. I pay for two parcels.
On the screen there for 121 Coomer, you see the front is 74-05, and then the back parcel is 7414.
Yep,
The front parcel per Washington County is 1 acre, and the back is .562. So altogether, it comes to 1.562 acres.
so Troy, I think that means they're even considering if they were one parcel, either way. We're still a little shave under the 2
Is that true?
acres.
Is the township is combining them for purposes of this?
Yes.
Also, we're going with the fact that it is combined.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good question.
Okay.
I just have a point of clarification. So the alpaca, are they service animals or are they emotional support animals?
I mean, they're both. Like I said, I'm blessed to be standing here. I got my face beaten, I got my finger shattered, my wrist shattered.
Ma'am, I don't mean that, you don't need to share that. You're welcome to say, but you don't need to share that with us if you're uncomfortable doing so. We're very
Yeah,
sympathetic.
I'm
but-
sorry, I have PTSD and this whole
Okay.
thing just gets me all upset. No, they're service, they're not registered, but that's what they are, my therapist.
Do you, do you have any kind of a note that you could provide us or anything from your doctor just to state that the emotional support animals are part of your treatment or therapy, or would you be able to provide something of that nature possibly?
I mean, I can, call her, I don't have anything right now.
Okay.
I didn't realize I needed it.
Okay. I think we're just asking to, put information into the record in support of, a hardship. That would be something that we would consider and would help the case, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
And to be
Yeah.
clear, you don't need to share what the disability is, but, just
Fence
that you
requirement.
have one and that these emotional support animals are necessary for your treatment.
Yep.
From some licensed medical provider.
Right. Yep.
I did have a question. I know that either you or Cecil Township provided a few photos for us showing the fenced-in area in the front yard for the 2 alpacas. I did have a question in regards to, is there an outdoor shed that they could take shelter in, or do they reside in your dwelling?
No, there's 2 sheds out back. And like I said, the only reason I put them in the front yard in May was because I thought that they would eat it quickly, like in a week, and I was gonna put them in the backyard until I got my lawnmower fixed, but they haven't been in the backyard since I got the letters. There's over an acre in the back fenced in, and there's a big Rubbermaid shed and another building. I don't know what pictures you have, because I didn't provide you with any
She
pictures.
said she bought. I think we should seek some counsel.
Mhm. So,
Third day, it's probably in May.
Yeah, it would have been whenever the lawyer went out.
just a clarifying question. So you mentioned no complaints until May, which is shortly after you released the alpaca to the front portion of the property. Since then, you've kept them in the back, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And have you had any more complaints?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, like I said, they were there for 9 months, from August 1st till sometime in May, when it was the middle of May, so it was 9 months and there wasn't an issue.
So-
My neighbor, I spoke to my next door neighbor, Carl McShane, and he doesn't have an issue with them, and the field is like 4 foot high, if you can see in the picture, that's, disturbing to me that that grass there can stay that long. They didn't cut that grass all summer, so.
So Liz, can you just confirm for us, did you receive the complaint? Was it one complaint that you received?
So I did not receive the complaint.
Okay,
It was voiced to the township manager,
okay,
and I followed up on that. However, in working with Ms. Duncan, I did speak to a couple adjacent property owners, and I have not received any complaints from them. Most of them did not even know the alpacas were there.
okay, thank you. More questions?
You wanted to request the
You wanna take an
request
executive-
for counsel?
Yeah, we're just going to take a quick minute and go into executive session with the solicitor to ask him a couple clarifying questions, and then we'll come. Well, wait, before I do that, is anyone here to speak in opposition or in support of this particular issue regarding the alpacas and the 121 Creamer Road? Anybody else speaking to that? Okay, well, we'll take a quick executive session on this point, and we will come back in just a couple minutes. You can sit down and relax for a minute, and we'll be back. All right. So what we'd like to do is ask that you get a note from your therapist or your medical care provider that states, and we don't need specifics like Mr. Volz was saying, just in general that you have a disability and part of your treatment is needing to have these 2 alpacas as your emotional support animals. If we have that information, I think, I won't speak for everyone, but we could look at next month approving that if you're able to provide us with that information. Does that sound reasonable? Okay. So with that said, what we'd like to do then is I'd like to make a motion that we continue this issue to the 10/21/2024 meeting. Can I get a second?
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes 3-0. Thank you for sharing with us and coming to represent us today. All right. The next item we have on the list here is, I'm just making sure, Dennis Slushak, if I'm saying your name right, I hope. Yes, good, Slushak? Yes? Close. Okay, this is Grudovich Road, and this is a C1 General Commercial Zoning District, and the request is appeal of the zoning officer's determination regarding vacant land use. So we'll just ask, like we do, to have you give a few words about what you're requesting, and then give us an opportunity to ask any questions if the board has any.
Okay, I've got some packets here for you to
Okay.
review.
Can you just state your name for the record, please?
Pardon me?
Can you please state your name?
Yes, ma'am. Dennis C. Sluchek.
Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak on this particular matter? If you could just, state your name for the record at this time, and then we'll ask for any comments that you might want to provide as we go along.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Lonich, L-O-N-I-C-H. I'm an attorney licensed in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I maintain an office at 11 East Bow Street, Washington, Pennsylvania, 15301. I'm here on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Shane, and I am requesting status on their behalf as a party to this hearing so that I am entitled to receive any and all decisions or paperwork concerning this hearing. I will, in recognition of the solicitor and to the board, I do have questions for the applicant as well as the hearing officer, that if Mr. McKay is here and present and intends to offer any testimony.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shaw.
Charles Shane, I own 38 Grudovich Road, it's the adjoining parcel.
Thank you.
Okay. Your status to participate in this appeal is granted. You're an adjoining neighbor. You certainly have standing to participate in this appeal, or this appeal.
Thank you.
Okay, so,
Okay.
everybody else got a book, I didn't get one. We'll share, we could share. Okay, go ahead, that's okay. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, if you open up the packet, there's, first pictures are numbered. And number 1 is of, Mr. McKay, Bob McKay's house, which is adjacent to the, vacant lot that I own, which is in between, Mr. Shane's residence and Mr. McKay's. That's on the picture number 2, shows that lot and shows, Mr. McKay's, son parking on it, and they store wood on it, and
well maintained. If you look at that, you wouldn't know that the lot did not belong to him. Picture number 3 is a closer up look at the vacant lot and a better shot of Mr. Shane's house. If we go to.
So real quick, so we have the vacant lot and we have Mr. Shane, if we're looking from the road, Mr. Shane's house on the left and Mr. McKay's house on the right. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Number 1, which would be on the right, would be Mr. McKay's house.
Okay. Go ahead, continue. Sorry for interrupting.
So if you go to the aerial that I have on, that's dated 5/30/23. That's a pretty recent aerial on Google Earth. And I lettered the properties. One being Mr. McKay, 2 being Dave Johnson's house,
This one has it.
Johnson residence. 3, mine isn't real clear, I hope yours are. That's Mr. Shane's property. You go down further, 4, in the vegetation, the trees got things pretty covered up there, but there's a house there, 4, which is Patty Ungaveria's house, or Golick's. Golick was Patty Ungaveria's mother. Then the next residence is 58 Grudovich, which is one of my homes that my daughter and her 6-year-old grandson, or my 6-year-old grandson, is moving into the house. Then number 6, further up, closer to the cul-de-sac, you don't have a good picture of it. The map is blocking it out, is John Lejevic's house. Then 7, to your far left, is 49 Grudovich, which is a home that I presently reside in. So, right there off the bat, you got 7 residences on Grudovich Road. 6 of them all on the right-hand side or the west side of Grudovich Road, going up in front of Mr. Shane's property.
So just to clarify, number 2, is that a home?
Number 2, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then number 7, is it on the right side? Like if I'm looking at the road, is it on the right side or the left?
On the left side.
Okay.
Would be on the,
So number 2 and number 7 on the left side, and the rest are on the right side?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And so, as you can see, Grudovich Road is pretty much a residential property residential road. Now, these homes have been on Grudovich Road, which wasn't Grudovich Road back 75 years ago. But these homes have been there for at least 75 years.
Understood.
The property on the left, or the one that I reside in, has been there for 50 years. That was my brother's home. And he is deceased, and I bought the house off the
those, like I said, those homes, we resided on, Grunovich Road, the Sluchak family, over 100 years in my family's name. I'm 72 years old. I've been there all my life. So I was born and raised there. So this has all been residential and farming for over 100 years. And these homes have all been here for over at least 75 years. Now, the township came and zoned this commercial. Because at that point in time, the township had to show so much commercial, and this was done by Mr. Cecil. And the township came in, and they, anything around the interstate, anything along South Point Boulevard, had to be zoned commercial. Now, these homes, I feel, take precedence. That they've been grandfathered in, they've been residential homes for over 50 years.
Right.
75 years.
Liz, can you confirm the zoning of this parcel was zoned to commercial when the initial UDO was formed in 2000, do you know?
I do not know.
Okay, just because before, 75 years ago, we didn't have a zoning ordinance, right? So at some point in time, the township looked at, much like we're doing now, the township looked at the potential for the future of the township and said, well, in order to keep our tax base up, there are areas that would be good candidates for commercial, and much like they're going through now, it's sort of a process that, I don't think there's a certain, percentage they have to adhere to, but, I mean, you want to make a plan for the future that accommodates different types of needs and things like that.
And I dealt that with Mr. Cecil. Okay, this goes back probably 1995, 1990. I think that property was then rezoned, don't hold me to it, but somewhere around 2000.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's when the initial
But I
UDO
mean,
was.
this is how long I've been dealing with the township on zoning of this property.
Understood.
Because I owned over 50 acres there.
Mhm.
Okay, and the parcels, I own most of the parcels on Grunovich Road that is residential. And this is the way I plan on keeping it. Because I've got my family, my grandchildren, my daughter is coming to live with it. And, so, that's the history of that. And then if you go a little further, I got, Liz, I don't know if you can, maybe pass this down to them. I noticed I didn't have a better copy. I didn't have, this was 2005, but it was taken in the fall, and you can better see individual properties.
Mr. Sluchak, before we move on, you've presented us with 3 photographs, one with a number 1, one with a number 2, and one with a number 3, and then an overhead view dated 5/30/2023 with numbers on it.
Yeah,
Would you like those to be entered into evidence as exhibits?
of the aerials,
These 3 pictures, 1, 2, and 3, and then this
yes.
aerial.
yes,
Wait,
it's
just
all
to,
evidence.
okay, just to clarify one thing. Picture number 1 corresponds to number 1 on this map. Picture number 2 actually corresponds to this vacant lot, correct?
No, picture, number 2 is on left side of Grudovich Road.
Oh, so this is where number 2 here, this is a photo of this.
Yes,
Pointed at the vacant lot, though. You're standing on this parcel and you're pointing this way to the vacant lot?
yes. Well, no.
I'm just trying to understand.
All right.
Yes,
Sorry if I'm not making sense.
Yeah.
have any extra copies for council?
For Shane's counsel?
Yeah.
Ellen Barney has, I think, a copy. that-
We can
So-
share. I'll give this,
Well, well,
we, you wanna-
hold on.
yes.
Yeah, I was gonna tell you, hold on, one quick question, because I did have a question. So, sorry for the, like, bluntness of the question.
No,
So, in our agenda, it says nature of request, appeal the zoning officer's determination regarding a vacant land use. So, we're going into all these pictures, and we understand the properties and whatnot. What's the request that we're discussing here?
okay, the request is, Liz, Ross, Ms. Ross made a decision, I'm not sure of the dates, but she gave Mr. Shane a 25-foot setback from my vacant property. Okay, in residential area, it has a minimum to be 100 foot. And if you read your own,
Ordinance.
ordinance, if I may go and read it, to answer your question.
Yeah.
This is the vacant lot.
Yep.
I'd like to make my objection on the record against this gentleman.
Okay, can you
Let's-
hold, sir?
No, let,
please?
let Mr. Lonich
I
speak.
have the right
Let
to
Mr.
make an
Lonich
objection
speak.
before you introduce any evidence. The evidence, 90% of what this gentleman has just said already is hearsay. I understand the rules of the municipality planning code and ordinance allow certain hearsay, but there's no credibility to what he is saying based upon Mr. Cassiola or any of the ordinance that were adopted by this township. What is, and specifically, and this board will recall, and I'll ask the record to reflect, we went through an extensive matter regarding Mr. Shane. If this gentleman doesn't understand, this board can explain it to him once again that that property is zoned commercial. End of story.
Correct.
Nobody's taken away a residence that he has, or Mr. McKay, or anybody else along that area. The pictures that are, I'm gonna object to all the pictures, because it has nothing to do with the application or the matter that, by way of this application, is before this board, which Mr. Jones has just pointed out. I'm gonna get my objection on the record.
Thank you, sir.
I do feel that his information that he's provided is providing context for us to understand the issue. I would agree that, to be fair, what matters is what the parcel is zoned. Any kind of pre-existing use before the zoning happened says that, okay, you can continue to use that in that way because it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, if you will. But a parcel, I guess, one question that I have, does the parcel that we're talking about, where we're looking at having the structure constructed, it is zoned commercial, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Do you have a map of your?
Let's hold on one second. Let's
Yep.
ask our questions to
Yep.
Mr. Slushak.
We'll finish this first, okay. Questions for Mr. Slushak that anybody has at this time?
May I, give my 2 cents to?
Sure,
Okay.
go for it.
Now, you're just saying that that property is zoned commercial,
Correct.
okay? If you go back and you look in the rules in every zone, it has the potential to be commercial. It is residential. It has been, people are paying taxes on it, residential. Mr. Shane has paid taxes, residential, has a residential house on his lot that he's bought. So that's all residential. Now, he's come to the township to see if he could then put a commercial building on it. That's fine. If that's the case, you gotta maintain the setbacks. Okay? Now, he's got a residential property on both sides of his future development that he has to maintain 100-foot setbacks. Am I not correct?
So just one area of clarification, it's zoned commercial with the potential to maintain residency, according to what my colleague Cara stated previously. So, quick question, is there a dwelling on the property?
No, there's not a dwelling.
Does anybody reside on the property?
Does anybody reside on the property? If there's not a dwelling,
Therefore, it
nobody
can,
resides. However, Mr. McKay, who adjoins the closest adjoining property, is
understood,
maintaining and taking care of that property.
understood, but that's
Okay.
separate property. So last piece I would say is therefore, as it is zoned commercial, it can be considered as such, commercial.
Just to clarify, Mr. McKay does not own that property, correct? You
No,
own
I
that
do.
property, right? Okay.
I own the property, and Mr. McKay
There's no lease agreement or anything like that,
is utilizing it because he needs the extra space.
okay.
Okay, and it's a residential property. If,
What is he making an appeal for?
if you look at section 202 of the Cecil Township Unified Development Ordinance, section 240-8, in the ordinance defines use as the specific purpose for which land, or a building is designated, arranged, intended, or for which it is, or may be, occupied, or maintained.
Yep.
Now, if I'm now, you see a little bit humor in that, can you explain to me?
Yes, because again, for the second or third time now, we're talking about a zoned property that's commercial, and you're continuing to go through the definition of residential. However, your issue is with the zoning of the property. That's not what we're here to discuss. It is zoned as a C1 commercial zoning district. Therefore, those rules should apply unless it is a residential property with a dwelling which one resides on, which typically was, to use your own words, grandfathered in. Like you said, it was historically a residential area. I do feel for you that in the past it was residentially zoned, and the fact that it has been since changed to commercial zoning. However, it is now commercial zoning. It is a vacant lot in a commercial zone district, and it should be treated as such.
Okay, well, you're talking about Mr. Shane's property, correct?
No, I'm
All-
talking
all
about
of
the
the property.
vacant lots
Yeah.
in that zone.
Then you're taking away, you're stripping
Not
the
taking
rights-
anything.
You're stripping the rights of the residents that lived there for over 75 years. You're taking
This, sir, I'm sorry, just to clarify, we did not establish the zoning here. If you want to make a request for rezoning of these parcels to residential, you can make that request to the Board of Supervisors.
Right.
All we can do here is say it's zoned commercial, so therefore we have to adhere to the commercial zoning because there's no pre-existing residential use of this prior to the establishment of the zoning ordinance. So that's the issue we're in. We have to treat it as commercial because on paper, even though I understand you drive down the road, it looks residential, on paper, it is commercially zoned, so that's what we have to adhere to.
Okay, so you're saying it's okay for you to create spot zoning?
It's not
No.
spot zoning, sir.
It is, yes, no, it's spot
It's not just, Liz, can you clarify? Spot zoning would be if there were one parcel in that area that was zoned commercial. Is that correct? There's one, how many parcels on Grudovich Road are zoned commercial today?
How many parcels are on Grudovich Road that is presently being used as residential and has been used?
But
Let's take
unfortunately,
a pause and let's get back to, you know, the question before us.
Right.
If I'm understanding your position correct, it's that every property on Grudovich Road should be treated as residential and a 100-foot setback should apply, even if it's never been used for residential purposes.
The thing of it is, every property on Grudovich Road is pretty much residential. The vacant lot is used as residential.
How do you use that lot for residential purposes?
Mr. McKay?
No, I'm asking you, sir.
Well, I don't use it. Mr. McKay is using it.
but you're the owner of the property.
Pardon me?
You are the owner, and there's no lease agreement or anything like that between you and Mr. McKay that says he's
It's a
paying you to
gentleman's
use it.
agreement that you can, if you maintain the property, you can use it for your use, residential use. Okay? So, Mr. McKay is using that property, as your ordinance says, can be used for residential use.
But to be specific, residential means that he is residing, someone is residing in a structure on the property. And that is not the case.
He is residing right next to it. I show you the pictures of it.
I understand, I
So
understand.
I just have one quick question. What was your request of the zoning board again?
My request is where, Ms. Ross, I'm not sure of the dates, but, granted Mr. Shane a 25-foot setback.
So just to be clear, Ms. Ross did not grant anything. She might have given a letter of advisement, or were you asking information on advisement? She doesn't have the responsibility of granting such appeal. If there's an appeal or something, that would come to the board. Go
So
ahead.
she determined the setback based upon your property as a commercial lot, and you are appealing that decision.
Yes.
I motion we vote on that.
I just want to get on the record, given this gentleman's representation, the letter from Ms. Ross that he is referring to is dated March 1st, 2024. His appeal was dated sometime in July at best. He's well past 30 days, which will require him under municipality planning code, I think it's 614, whatever, and also Article 9, in which he had to file an appeal, of which he was well aware of, because as this board recognizes, he was present at the hearing for Mr. Shane. I am being waved up to the front table.
I was just wondering if I could see the letter.
This is the letter dated March 1st, 2024, from Ms. Ross to Mr. Shane involving his property.
And I agree that that exists, and you are certainly welcome to present, we'll put that as Objectors Exhibit 1, but I don't think that's procedurally accurate for this case. And I think that brings us up to another point.
It's not procedurally accurate, counsel.
I believe he is appealing a letter from Ms. Ross dated June 7th.
That's all, that's a subterfuge, which I'll get to.
And I think I understand, I think I know your issue with that letter. But maybe we'll clarify, why are we here today? What are you appealing?
I'm appealing the 25-foot setback in lieu of the 100-foot setback on the south side of Mr. Shane's property.
Maybe more specifically, what letter are you appealing from Ms. Ross? Is it this June 7th one that was attached to your application?
Yes, let's see,
what caused you to request this zoning interpretation from Ms. Ross? For example, when Mr. Shane requested a letter, it was accompanied by a proposed development. Did you propose a development specifically with Ms. Ross to see if it complied with the zoning ordinance?
No, I'm proposing to keep the aesthetics of a residential properties that exists from one end of Grudovich Road to the other end of Grudovich Road. Now, Mr. Shane bought that property. He bought that as a residential property. He bought it, I'm not sure what year,
I think,
but now he wants to put commercial in it.
but he,
Amongst the residential existing residential property that's been there for all this time.
so I just want to get on the record here that there's nothing really to appeal here, because there was nothing that we ruled on. It simply was a letter of advisory that you had sent to Liz, right, to Ms. Ross. So there's really nothing that we can take action on, because you've not made any sort of an application, so we can't deny or reject anything. This is just simply a question that you asked her
Well,
for.
Did she not grant him a 100-foot setback from my property? Did you not grant him a 100-foot setback?
So I did not grant anything. I just wrote the determination that I would,
Ex-
use that setback. What did I do?
That's not correct. Mr. Shane's property is here. This side of the property, you indicated he had to have 100 feet because it abutted a residential. To this applicant, it was 25 feet. That's what the application was. That's Mr. Shane's property. He has said repeatedly that what he's trying to do is appeal the decision that we spent hours here, which is well out of time. He went to Ms. Ross and said,
Well,
"Hey,
that's not what he has not requested to appeal that decision. He's requesting to appeal a letter that she wrote.
yes.
So that we're not here for the right,
That's nothing to do with it.
right.
I'll spend the next 45 minutes in cross-examination of this gentleman, Mr. McKay and Ms. Ross. But I'm suggesting that after this gentleman rests, before I do that this board make a motion and deny his appeal, because he hasn't done anything to show of what is even before this board.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of what we were asking, what is the basis for requesting Ms. Ross to write this letter? Was it accompanied by any proposed use you had of the property, or were you seeking an advisory opinion to appeal?
No, the purpose of the letter was to state that this is a residential property being used by a residential existing 50 years you've been there? 50 years that you've been living there? And, he's been using this property, and,
Yeah.
So I think
and
we
I've
need a
been
little
paying
historical,
taxes. You can see the residential taxes I've been paying.
I think we need a little historical reminder about, I'll refer to it as the Shane appeal. A few months ago, Mr. Shane filed an appeal relating to his property, arguing that it should be a 25-foot setback on either side. Ms. Ross made a determination that it was a 100-foot setback on one side and 25 on the other. That determination was appealed to this board, and it was accompanied by a zoning variance application. This board upheld Ms. Ross's determination with respect to the 100-foot setback, and the 25-foot setbacks, and denied the variance. That case is now before the Court of Common Pleas of Washington County and will be argued next month. My concern with your application is that, and you were a participant in that hearing, we gave you participant standing, and you submitted a brief or argument in that case. And I think you raised these same issues with respect to the 25-foot setback on the property we're talking about now. So my question is, I don't understand the point of this June 7th letter for being anything other than advisory opinion to something that's currently before the Court of Common Pleas in Washington County.
They're in front of the Court of Common Pleas of Washington County fighting the 100-foot setback. Am I not correct?
That's what they appealed, but
Yes, that's what
You
they
did
appealed.
not appeal-
That's what he appealed.
to his point, you did not appeal Liz's March determination letter.
What did I, March?
Yeah.
No, I waited till June 7th.
Okay.
To be honest and frank, I wasn't even present at March. And I wasn't even aware of it until I started digging into this and got more of the information in detail. And said, what you got to understand, okay, Mr. Shane bought into this property, okay, I think maybe 2 acres.
I'm gonna object.
And
I'm gonna let him
he's
stand here and make
objecting.
any
I'm trying to
accusations
talk to the
against my
board,
client,
and you're
To
objecting.
be heard, gentlemen, please stop. Yes, please listen to the objection.
I'm going to object, because I'm gonna let this gentleman sit here and make any accusations against Mr. and Mrs. Shane for what they knew. That's not relevant in any manner to what's before this board here
Correct.
tonight.
I would agree. Can you try to keep
Correct.
your statements to your opinions or facts and information that you've brought to present to the board? So you can't assume what Mr. Shane knew or didn't know when he purchased the property. We would need to ask for his testimony on that. The fact, though, is here, it's all, I'm of the opinion it's all sort of irrelevant, because why it is irrelevant is because what you have appealed is not really appealable, if you will. It was simply an advisory response, an advisory opinion that Ms. Ross gave to you. If you wanted to appeal the setbacks that were, part of the original ruling in March, that would be a different story, and we would have something to talk about. But right now, I'm of the opinion there's not really anything to rule on here, because there's nothing that's been pre-decided that we need to appeal. Am I making sense? Mr. Volz, is there something that you want to add to that? I just feel like there's no action for us to take here.
No, you're right. This board isn't authorized by the MPC or our zoning ordinance to issue advisory opinions. And, typically, we have authority to grant a denial of an application or something that accompanies a proposed development. But here, there's nothing correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't proposed anything for Liz to approve or deny
Yes.
or interpret along with the development. It's just you kind of requested that she give you her thoughts on what the setback should be for each of these parcels.
And
Well,
we,
see, I'm sorry, I guess I don't quite understand or agree with that. I'm looking at, are you saying that, does Mr. Shane have the right to a 25-foot setback at this point?
I don't
On
think
my
Mr.
property.
I don't think Mr. Shane has requested that type of relief. I think he requested a 25-foot setback on one side in a variance,
Correct. because
and
we
that
want
was
to
it.
go on the right side.
Right.
Correct? Oh, sorry.
That is the nature of the variance request, because Ms. Ross determined that on the right side of the property, which abuts this gentleman's property, is a 25-foot setback. We're entitled to rely on that. There wasn't anything to appeal because she was correct.
And it was
See?
accompanied by a zoning application.
It was.
Correct.
And furthermore, as Mr. Schultz, as you know, and this board can take acknowledgement of, under your record filed to Mr. Shane, zoning hearing board 000077, this gentleman, the applicant, submitted a document in which he writes challenging Ms. Ross' March 1st, 2024 letter, in which she advised Mr. Shane that it was 100 feet on the one side and 25 feet on the other. He known about this since at least March of 2024. He's just trying to get in an appeal because he didn't take an appeal in the Shane matter in going through all this. And I think as the board recognizes, he's out of time, this matter is not properly before the board, he hasn't done anything to establish and appeal any decision from Ms. Ross in a timely fashion, and it should be all thrown out.
Well,
Yep.
that's an attorney speaking, and that's his opinion for Mr. Shane. Now, this is a resident of over 7 other people that live on that Grudovich Road.
Completely understand that.
Okay, so.
What we also, though, are looking at another attorney's point of view who speaks for the township as a whole, right, as part of the zoning hearing board. And so what I'd like to do, if you guys, do we want to do a quick executive session on this before we move any further, or do we have any more questions?
Let me ask you one more. Okay, if this is gonna get thrown out, and Mr. Shane seems to be able to get the 25-foot setback, you think I'm gonna sit back and just say, okay, let him have his 20? No, I'm gonna appeal it, and if I have to, I'll get an attorney to represent me to talk his language.
So,
Okay, I'm trying to do this, and I'm appealing to the board.
so
To the board
to speak
as a citizen,
to
a resident of Cecil Township.
to maintain some kind of credibility and some order. My recommendation to you, Mr. Slusek, is it sounds like you have an issue with zoning. You should go through the proper channels to attempt to obtain residential zoning, number one. Number two, your decision or what you're bringing in front of our board has really nothing to do with Mr. Shane's separate case.
What, I don't, why should I go through the effort of proving residential status?
Because
of
you're,
property that I've owned,
because you're in a,
plus property that people own that's lived there for over 75 years.
All right,
Okay.
and sir,
That is the
please, give us 1 second here. We understand your position regarding the fact that there's currently occupants on the road that are residential. We understand that. We understand the history. The fact of the matter is that it is zoned commercial.
Right.
We cannot restrict someone from using a property in the way that it's zoned. When they purchased that property, it had a zoning associated with it. So when he purchased that property, he knew he was purchasing a commercial property because that's disclosed as part of the purchase agreement. So what I'd like to do is, I agree with my colleague that if you want to have us adhere to residential guidelines, this property needs to be zoned residential. And you can apply and ask the Board of Supervisors to rezone all of Grudovich Road if you want to, with other people's participation there, and ask and have that be considered by them. But unfortunately, right now, the zoning on the property is commercial, and there's really nothing we can do to ask for exceptions beyond that because it is zoned commercial.
Okay, but it's also butting up against residential property, is it not?
Well, I mean, I think that's also putting the cart ahead of the horse, because, one of the main issues you have is whether you've requested an advisory opinion, because you don't have any development application before the board. You didn't ask Liz for a permit or anything else that she rejected or accepted. So
No, I
I'm
was
struggling why
appealing-
we're here.
I was appealing her decision.
She didn't make a decision.
Well,
That's not a decision that she makes. She tells you what she interprets the ruling to be. The ruling came before us as part of the Shane application, and we agreed with the 25-foot
okay,
and
well, then
1,000.
I'm appealing your decision.
You are certainly within your rights to do that, if that is
That's
the
what I'm
board's
doing, I'm
decision.
appealing your decision.
Right.
Her comment, now I'm
Go
appealing
ahead.
your decision. If hers was just a suggestion, and you say you're the one who's making up the rules, then I'm appealing your decision. I'm telling you, and if that doesn't work for you tonight, then I'll be filling out an appeal on your decisions tonight.
Okay, so that decision was made back in March, is that correct? do we have a time frame that restricts us from the amount of time that we can accept appeals to a decision?
So typically, a party has 30 days to appeal determination by the zoning officer. That is what Mr. Shane did when Liz issued his decision saying 100-foot setback on this side, 25-foot setback on this side. He appealed the 100-foot setback portion of the decision.
So, and if Mr. Slushak at the same time would have appealed the opposite side,
Yes.
then we would all be in accordance and we would be working along with the right timelines. So you're saying that Mr. Slushak now is beyond the time that would be appropriate or available for him to make an appeal? Can we?
That's certainly what it seems like if his request to Liz in June wasn't accompanied by any requests for actual action related to the property.
He would have had to say, I want to appeal this
He
decision.
wants to say, I want to build something on this
Right.
property, does it comply with the zoning ordinance?
Correct.
And then if Liz would have said no, he could have appealed that decision. But just to ask for an advisory opinion, especially one that was answered several months before in an active case, seems to me to be an advisory opinion.
In that case was independent.
We need to rule on a case or controversy. We can't just rule.
Okay, well, you're just saying that you would uphold the 25-foot setback, whether it came from, her, but we're
Actually,
going,
I'm
we're
not.
going to,
I'm saying we can't make a ruling on that.
okay, so then what, okay, so I gotta come to the, to you, I gotta appeal, I gotta state that, hey, Mr. Shane is, gonna have to comply by a 100-foot setback from my parcel of property, my residential property.
I think what we need to do is, I think I'm convinced, and my fellow board members, you can concur or dissent with this, but we don't have anything to rule on right now. I think we need to take this offline and we need to advise Mr. Slushak, if he does have an opportunity to appeal a decision that was made by this board, we can provide him with guidance as to what that needs to be. But as of this matter for today, I don't think we have the right constructs in place to make a ruling one way or another. Do you, Mr. Volz, want to make comment to that?
Well, I think we do have something before us, so we need to either make a ruling on the standing issue, whether this is something we can actually decide. And the answer, if it's yes, then we go to the merits. If it's no, we rule on the standing issue, and then we issue a written decision that Mr. Slushak has 30 days to appeal that decision to the Court of Common Pleas of Washington County.
We should make sure we get our language correct.
And procedurally, if we were to make a motion to rule on standing or whether or not this is an advisory opinion, would you like to question the witness before we do so? Or would you like to have your client testify before we would do so?
I would allow the board to make its decision. If anything I'd have to do would then go to the merits and to be contemplated by the board at a later time. I would like to make one statement. I believe that the chair indicated that on any ruling, this board can advise the applicant of how he is to proceed. I would take exception with that. That is not within the authority or jurisdiction of the zoning hearing board to advocate on behalf of anybody. And this applicant can only be told that he will receive a written decision of the board's decision and within 45 days receive finding of fact and conclusions of law. Anything else, he has to make the determination of whether he wants to appeal anything further and how he.
With legal counsel, most likely, at that point.
Pardon me?
With his legal counsel at that point.
I don't, however he wishes to
Okay.
proceed.
Yeah, we
Thank
will
you.
just present it to him, correct.
So, can I just make a motion?
Deny the appeal
Yeah.
because the board lacks jurisdiction.
All right, she's good.
Maybe, Mr. Mr. Slushak, do you have anything else you'd like to share with respect as to whether or not this is an advisory opinion or whether you have standing to present this case?
No, not at this point.
Do you have any other witnesses you would like to present to the board on this issue?
Mr. McKay came down, I don't know if he,
I just think it would just delay what we should move to a further meeting in the future.
Thank you, sir.
because really, you know, he's the one that's gonna be negatively impacted at this point in time, unless I put a house there, build a home. You know, he's the one that's really being negatively impacted, and he's a resident, and he's right there.
Understood.
Will you make a ruling on standing then? Sort of
I just
the-
want to make it clear, in fairness to this gentleman, our position would be, even if you go and build a house, Ms. Ross as a zoning officer has already ruled, and what you're trying to do by Mr. McKay's property and your property is impact Mr. Shane's property, which is clearly improper. Even if you build a house there, we are entitled to rely on what Ms. Ross has already established. And she has established that there is 25 feet setback.
That was an opinion, not a ruling.
We're not gonna get,
Yeah.
that is a separate issue. I understand your point. I think your point was
You're an
just to
attorney.
tell Mr. Slushak that
That's
building a
opinion.
house isn't gonna change your position on the setback requirements.
That's
He's free to
opinion.
do what he wants, but from your position, building a house there doesn't change your impression.
Correct.
Your
Not
position,
only my
Your
position,
opinion on.
that Liz's prior determination is binding.
Correct.
which we are entitled to rely on.
Yes.
Yes, you are correct.
Yes.
So are you gonna
You do a motion.
this?
I have a
Okay,
question.
I move that we deny the appeal due to the fact that the board lacks jurisdiction to issue advisory opinions.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Do you have another issue to deal with?
Nope, that is it.
Okay.
You will issue a written decision, and you will, upon receipt of that, that's when your appeal rights start.
All right, so then I have, what, 30 days?
I would suggest you consult an attorney to make sure you're right on that, but generally speaking, yes, you have 30 days from the written decision to file that.
That's that gentleman right there.
He would-
Maybe he'll.
He might be
he'll-
conflicted out of representing you on this one.
Okay, thank you. All right. Timothy Jackson, waiting here all this time for issue.
For the 5-foot
For your
variance.
4-foot
Right.
variance. So, this is application 2024.
Should have got that application in earlier.
Right.
You can see all the fun that we have. Maybe you'll come back for another round of entertainment.
Right.
Application 2024-0013. Oh, sorry. I started talking. You good, Kathy? Okay, this is application 2024-0013, Timothy Jackson, 3128 Millers Run Road, Cecil, Pennsylvania. It's a 3C Village Commercial Zoning District, asking for a 4-foot side yard setback variance to install some deck chairs. I mean deck stairs, not chairs.
Hey,
Ooh,
chairs, all
if we
right.
were seeing deck chair variances, we'd be here a lot longer.
Timothy Jackson, Jackson, 3128 Millers Run Road.
Deck chairs, I'm losing it.
So, yeah, I'm requesting that 4-foot variance. The background on this is, followed the plan, got it approved, built the deck we didn't have the steps in because we knew we needed variance. So got the deck, inspected, March.
Gentlemen, could you
Gentlemen,
please take your
gentlemen.
conversation outside? Hey, hello. Could you guys just move into the, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry, continue.
Okay, so got the deck, inspected in March. The inspector actually said your house is gonna fall over before this deck falls over, so I was glad for that. And the plan was, with my contractor, was to follow variance after we got the deck 3 weeks turned into 3 months, so I came back at the end of June to find that the contractor had built the steps. So that's when I, had that letter, so I came up to, follow the variance. So if you have any questions, I can answer.
If I'm understanding correct, the deck's built, steps are built, the steps are built in the side setback,
They're
yard
not,
setback.
they're not complete, because when he told me he was building, I said, stop, don't finish them, because when I get back, we're gonna follow the variance for it, so so they're not completed.
Could you speak a little bit to the grade behind the building?
That's all hillside.
Okay.
That goes right up against the hillside.
So it restricts the ability to build steps.
Right, so putting the steps on the other side of the deck is not really an option because of the grade.
No, that's all rock
Okay.
back in there.
Okay.
More questions? All right, I move that we grant a 4-foot dimensional variance so that the applicant can construct the staircase to his deck as depicted in the application and testified to at the hearing. Can I get a second?
I'll make that second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for bearing with us and spending your Monday night. Okay. Application 2024-0014, Valley Brook Country Club, that's 425 Hidden Valley Road. Asking for a special exception for expansion of a non-conforming use for an outdoor storage pad. Specifically, the applicant is seeking to construct a material storage pad on the property. Hi.
Good evening, Chris Ham with KDH Consulting Engineers, 593 Rue Street, Greensburg, Pennsylvania, 15601. We're here tonight to request a special exemption to allow the construction of a 150 by 150 storage pad for Valley Brook Country Club. It would be an expansion of an existing legally non-conforming use. The golf course resides in a an R1 zoning, which does not allow for golf courses. However, the golf course was there long before the R1, so it is an existing non-conforming use. The access would come from Georgetown Road through an existing driveway.
Not to interrupt you, how long has the golf course been there?
56 years.
56 years? Can you introduce yourself? Sorry.
I'm John Shaw, the golf course superintendent.
By the way, that also shows up in some of their other documentation. It was over 50 years, so some of the other exhibits that we have corroborate that. Sorry, continue.
The site they're proposing, I'm not sure which that is actually a relatively flat area already. It is currently used for green, basically a donation site for green areas. So there'll be some minor grading. In addition to the special exemption request, we have submitted for a grading permit through the township, which would also be reviewed for the grading permit requirements and the stormwater management requirement for the small pad. As I mentioned, it actually comes off of, there's an existing, the Valley Brook Country Club property does extend to Georgetown Road. There is a 40-foot sliver that comes all the way out to Georgetown Road. So we do not need any easements through anybody else's property. There is an existing driveway that comes through there that's actually being used by a residential house a little farther back, which the country club has allowed that particular individual to use for, I'm not sure how many years he's been using it for quite some time. And he will still have access to the driveway as well.
What type of materials will be stored on the pad?
Sand, topsoil, mulch, just really kind of like the more maintenance materials.
Is that material already being stored somewhere on the property?
It is actually being stored down here in this area, which is it's actually on the Peters Township side of the creek.
I see.
What's the proposed area currently used for?
Like I said, it's basically a sod growing area where they'll actually grow new sod for the greens and some other areas that they.
So it is being used for golf course purposes right now?
Yeah, there will be no trees, no tree cutting, no actual buffers to any of the residents around there. They won't even spread the equipment that the material will be there is actually already being used by the golf course throughout the golf course.
Regarding the access from Georgetown Road, are you planning to get her in the process of getting a highway occupancy permit, or, okay. Is it approved yet, or?
We're working through it with PennDOT.
The building itself, what's the square foot of the building?
No building.
Oh, there is no
Just the,
building.
No, it's
just
a
Pardon me, I-
150 foot.
Oh, just a,
Just asphalt pad.
okay.
Just asphalt pad.
Yeah,
I apologize.
There'll probably be, they're portable sand silos that they're actually, I think there's one down here now, or it might be in the process of being moved, but they're basically just portable silos that keep the sand dry, but they're not a permanent structure.
Is there an anticipated disruption or increase in traffic on Georgetown Road?
I'd say on average, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, is maybe 4 trucks whenever they get deliveries, and that is not a daily. It's whenever they get a round of maintenance and they need to get some trucks in. So the additional traffic would be very negligible, especially since you have, and I can't remember what this facility here is. It's an a large electrical facility. So I wouldn't speak on it, but I would imagine they probably have a lot more truck traffic coming in and out than what this would be. This would be the largest truck, maybe a tri-axle, a lot of other smaller trucks.
okay. Anybody, any more
Chris.
questions?
Chris, could I ask a question? Would we need some sort of documentation on the driveway permission?
No, I think that's a separate from what they're asking for us.
Okay.
They're just asking us for the simple zoning permission to expand into this property.
Mhm.
Have you guys made any prior requests for a special exception to expand the non-conforming use?
Not that I'm aware of.
Anything within the last 10 years? It's just in the code, I just want to make sure. No.
Yeah, the last large upgrades to the club for anything is actually on the Peters Township.
Okay. More questions, anyone? I move that we grant the request for the special exception so that the applicant can construct the storage pad as set forth in the application and testified to at the hearing.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And I will let the engineers know so we can get that grading permit issued for you guys in the meantime while we're waiting on their official determination letter.
All right, one more thing I wanted to mention, just from a discussion perspective. This closes your issue, so if you don't want to listen to me blabber on, you don't have to stay. Doesn't need to be. I want to make a request officially that we have, and I'll send an email if the board is in agreement with this, to Jack King to get the zoning board meeting minutes linked on the website. I mean, we have the minutes, they're just not accessible through the website, even though there's literally a part right there where we could click on it. So when we're looking for background information versus having to contact the township or comb through all the email that we have, it'd be a lot easier if I could just click on the particular day that I knew something happened and I could pull that up. So I will send Jack an email as long as everybody's good with that.
Yes.
Side note,
Yeah.
prior to, me being in this position, it was not township policy to keep minutes. They relied on the solicitor's offices to do that. So there may not be much prior to the last 10 years.
That's okay. I mean, even like back to 2022, my brain, just with this other, the recent
Well,
issue,
for
I was like, I
example,
can't
We
remember.
were looking for the Lambert Fisher
Yeah.
prior application. We were
Yeah.
looking for how we rolled in the settlement agreement.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, so, and I did not, I put language in that determination letter to Sloshak.
You've been earning your money.
I did not realize
But this,
that he couldn't
some of
appeal
these
an
meetings you've been at.
advisory.
Yeah.
that's fine.
I think we got it
Get you
as well
overtime.
strained as we.
But I need to, I should know that, so they have to have some type of plan.
They need to ask for permission or something. Ask you for like a permit or something.
Because the way that the ordinance reads, it says like anyone aggrieved by a determination of the zoning
Yes.
officer can appeal to the zoning hearing board. And so that was why, you know, I feel, I mean, obviously this is gonna continue for a long time with them, but I just feel like I didn't nip that in the bud if I would've known.
any reason.
To interfere with this development, which
Oh, yeah.
It's personal, it's
It is.
not.
But
Not anything that needs to be brought up here and waste all our time, so.
I just put myself as a chairwoman, just to
Chairwoman.
make a point.
I like it.
Anything else anybody wants to discuss, any items or anything? Oh, I guess I had one more question since we're here. According to what I saw, golf courses aren't allowed in any zoning not explicitly allowed in any zoning district, which is interesting. I don't know if it's something that maybe we should consider getting added as an approved use in some zone. Because it seems to me that they would have to apply for special exception for everything. So that seems like a little bit of extra
I don't mean to
burden.
interrupt, but I just pulled up Google Earth, and just to give you context, what we're dealing with, that's what's across the street that Denny Sluchek owns.
Yeah, we realize.
It's a slag pile, it's a dump, it has ridiculous amounts of crap on it. Right behind us is the T lot, or the
Park and
transfer
ride,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah, parking
This-
ride.
I know this is off the record, but it's just like, you know.
No, it's
I mean,
ridiculous, we
I
understand.
mean, this
And-
guy he's literally pushed a tenant over the hill with a gun. He's tried to run us off the road a couple weeks ago collecting
And
rent.
Tom knows that, he says, just go to the police, I'm like, let's cool it on that right now.
If I wasn't in the car with him, I'm sure he would have done something to him.
Stupid.
And
Man.
so, but this bucolic neighborhood kind of thing, this is environmental. My family has had a design firm for over 50 years. My dad's an award-winning architect. There's nothing that wouldn't be sensitive to the environment, unlike his property,
Right.
that we would put on there.
I feel you.
That would be beautiful.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to do it for years. That's why we have residents.
So,
I mean, I have to pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
So, just for context.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know it's off the record, but.
All right, this meeting is adjourned?
no, it's not.
Oh.
We did the most important motion.
Oh,
Yeah.
motion.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion to close this meeting of the Cecil Township Zoning Hearing Board.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0.
motion